Hello and welcome to the recap of our math lesson today. This is my first try at this, so please be patient with me. We started by putting this on the board and we said 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4, and we came up that it equaled 5/4. We counted each one of the ones across the top, and there are 5 of them. We also then noticed in green, and you can see that rectangle, that 4/4 made a hole, so we had one hole and then we had 1/4 left over. So we talked about how we could add those fourths together. The next thing we did was talking about how those were equivalent. 1 and 1/4 is equivalent to 5/4. I then threw up this picture here and said, what do you see here? And kids talked about how they saw one whole and then 1/4. So the same thing. We also talked, though, that how some kids, and you'll see it right here, some kids want to call this 5/8 because they look and they see, oh, there's 4 pieces here, there's 4 pieces here, that would be 5 shaded in out of 8. Okay, and that would be incorrect, and that's why we slashed it in green. But we talked about how fractions are a part over a whole. To make a whole, it was 4/4. So we talked about how it would not be an 8 as our denominator, but rather a 4. Okay. We then talked about down here the same thing, using bar models instead of circle models. We also talked about how eighths would be double the pieces, so this would be fourths, not eighths. So whole is your denominator. We then put this up on the screen and said, how many do you see here? And the students responded with 5/3 and 1 whole and 2/3. Hopefully you can see in green how it talks about 1 whole being this whole, and then 1 whole, 1/3, 2/3. So next things we talked about were a couple more examples we just pulled up on the screen. We started with this one. This one we thought was rather simple, but then it was a little more complicated. Students could very easily see that it was 3 wholes and 1/2, so that part here was pretty easy right here. But when we had to make this, that was a little more difficult. Again, students wanted to say 7 out of 8, but 8 is not our denominator. 2 is our denominator because they are in 2 pieces. So we talked about that. This was a good thing we talked about here as well. Had a great discussion of 2 and 3/4 going from a mixed number to an improper fraction. We talked about how 2 whole right here is really 4/4 is 1 whole. 4/4 is your second 1 whole. So this would be 2 wholes. So there's 8 on top. And then 3/4, so that gives us 11. 4 plus 3 is 11/4. Our denominator doesn't change. We talked about it as a picture model here. 4, 4, 5, 6, or I should say 8, 9, 10, 11. And then each of these is cut into fourths, so 11/4 we talked about. Then we got into some crazy examples here, again going from mixed number to improper, going 5/5, 5/5, 5/5. We did fifths because our denominator is 5. There's 3 5/5, so that's 15, 16, 17 fifths. Over here we talked about how it's 8/8, and there would be 2 of them because 2 whole. Adding our 3 gave us 19/8. We talked about how 10/7 is the same thing as a division problem of 10 divided by 7, which gave us 1 whole with a remainder of 3 and 7 as our denominator, 1 and 3/7. I had other students say, Mr. Askey, I knew that 7/7 is 1 whole, so I just took away this 7 from 10 and I was left with 3, 1 and 3/7. Another perfectly acceptable example. On our homework today, we started here looking at these, I call them little pills. They look like medicine pills here. There's 3 whole and 1/2, so 3.5. The mixed number, a little more difficult, so again I recommended sketching a picture. We have 1 whole, 2 whole of 3s, so we're at 6 green so far, and then 7 green pieces, 7/3. Changing this to improper, again we took 1 whole out, and we had 1/6 left from our 7. Onto the bottom, again the exact same thing. We had to add them and then convert them as the only difference. And then lastly, on the back side, we discussed our area formulas again. Area of a triangle and area of a parallelogram. So base times height for the parallelogram, and area of triangle 1/2 base times height.